With home ownership all but out of the question, millions of Australians are staring down the grim reality they'll be forced to rent for life.
The majority of young Australians fear they'll never be able to own their own home in the face of rising interest rates.
The idea of home ownership for all Australians is fading somewhat.
The Australian dream of home ownership is increasingly becoming a distant reality for many, with headlines screaming about the worst housing affordability in 3 decades. It's crucial to delve deeper into this crisis. But is the situation as dire as what the media suggests, or is there more to this story? Are we really experiencing the worst housing crisis ever, or is this just an overstatement? Is the great Australian dream of owning a home dead? Most importantly of all, I'm going to explain why property price drops are generally not that significant, but more importantly, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room that I see, but the majority don't. The Great Australian Dream had its seeds sown post-World War II. The world had been on the rebound from the travesty of the war, and Australia's booming industries needed people to maximise its full potential. From 1945, the federal government embarked on an assisted passage migration scheme, and over the next 30 years, Australia would help over 1 million Britons immigrate. Under this scheme, Brits were allowed to travel for £10, which was nothing, and their kids' cost was free. As Australians like to give everything a nickname, these guys were dubbed the £10 Poms. The £10 Poms had a perception of a better life in Australia, better job prospects, better weather, and of course, the opportunity to own a nice house on a bit of land. This formed the basis of the Great Australian Dream. Fast forward to modern times, and promising the Great Australian Dream could be seen as some sort of sick joke. We have more developable land than any other country, yet we can't supply enough roofs to put over people's heads. Despite record immigration, we still don't have enough skills to build those homes, even if our governments actually wanted to do this. And despite our jobs market being pretty much at full capacity, we're still finding it hard for younger Aussies to get into the market. The data gives us some telling truths. Those who manage to enter the housing market are reaping the benefits and have seen their property values skyrocket. Since the 1990s, house prices have almost quadrupled, outpacing steady growth seen since the 60s. Census data reveals a stark decline in home ownership rates. In 1971, 68% of Australians aged 30 to 34 own their homes. Fast forward to 2021, and this figure has plummeted to just under 50%. For those aged 35 to 39, the drop is equally significant, from over 70% to 59%. This raises critical questions. What factors are leading to the exclusion of many Australians from the property market, while a select few flourish? How do we define this housing crisis, and what does it mean for those aspiring to own a home in the current climate? To comprehend the crisis, we must explore the dynamics of the property market. This framework reveals the mismatch between demand and supply, keeping prices high and making home ownership elusive, especially for current first home buyers. Since the 90s, Australia's interest rates were on a downhill slope. The Reserve Bank of Australia, who control interest rates, have often been blamed as the culprit for high property prices. They've been undeniably influenced by Australia's market. From 2008 to 2022, the nation experienced a prolonged phase of loose monetary policy, with rates declining or remaining stagnant. This period of really affordable borrowing significantly boosted home loan lending and propelled property values upwards. Yet, this is only part of the narrative. Historical data reveals that Australian property prices have withstood periods of increasing interest rates. We've seen that in the last 2 years. Additionally, international comparisons show that other countries with similar low interest rate environments didn't witness a parallel escalation in housing costs, suggesting that factors beyond interest rates going up are at play in shaping Australia's unique real estate landscape. Australia's major cities face a shortage of well-located land, which is land near essential services, infrastructure, and employment opportunities. Over 50% of the population resides in just 3 cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, leading to intense competition for limited, well-located land. This scarcity drives up property prices, making houses unaffordable for many. I know immigration is a hot topic and I'll get onto that later, but for now we have another scarcity issue that needs to be addressed. In 2015, something really important happened. I'm going to try and piece together what I think happened because I don't think there has been a really good explanation.
The other big news today, Australia has recorded its weakest rate of economic growth since the global financial crisis a decade ago.
Believe it or not, our economic problems back then was that we couldn't get the economy kicking. Actually, the threat of inflation slowly moving down was a real risk. We can see that trend occurring over a period of years. Also, we were coming to the end of the mining boom, which would have seen a significant decrease in capital investment. Rather than resort to QE, which was a strategy recently used in the US and Europe, we seemingly decided that public spending on infrastructure was the way to go. From then until 2019, the infrastructure went up about 450%. That was pre-COVID, and we all know there was extra money splashed around once COVID hit. This engineering of Australia's society has backfired because we maxed out the employment capacity. Then, when we should have had a recession to reset things, our governments decided to use the same playbook and create a whole lot of new cash and pump it into the system. This has pushed up wages due to a highly competitive job market. It's hard to have a proper recession when you've reached full capacity in your jobs market. A low unemployment rate helps maintain property prices as less people are forced to sell. That's fairly obvious. But you get these other weird second and third factor problems that are unforeseen until the problem is front and center. In recent years, the construction industry has had its struggles, to say the least.
More Australian building companies are facing financial ruin. According to industry experts, a perfect storm including supply issues and skyrocketing costs has led to the dire situation.
How can we have so much demand and at the same time all these builders and developers are going out of business? It's early pandemic. There's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty and doubt. The government are rolling out the gravy train, and as a part of that gravy train, they announced a $25,000 home builder grant, designed to keep the economy ticking over by rewarding home builders and renovators with a once-off $25,000 bonus. This put a spike in residential building approvals. Now that caused a lot more job demand. Remember, this is on top of the 5-fold plus increase in infrastructure spending, so incomes were forced up naturally. At the same time, we got all these supply chain shortages leading to skyrocketing cost of suppliers. A lot of these builders went bust because they just could not keep up with these increasing costs. The ones that were also building in future inflation into their costs. This situation highlights the complex interplay of external factors impacting the sector, directly influencing the availability and the affordability of new residential developments. Where we are right now, with Albo wanting to build 1.2 million homes, which is clearly not achievable, it suggests that we're not at rock bottom just yet. Okay, I'm pretty critical of the government on all levels, but the fact is that we have played a role in all of this as well. Our choices, which stem from the £10 POMs and wanting to own a quarter-acre block, have meant that we favour land and a nice big house over high-density living. This trend towards suburbanisation leads to the expansion of cities into wider areas, often with limited infrastructure, thereby reducing the availability of livable land. Consequently, this demand for suburban properties drives up land values dramatically, making it the most costly aspect of home ownership. The high land value in turn pushes overall property prices upwards, further challenging the affordability of homes. This situation creates a complex dynamic where the pursuit of a preferred lifestyle inadvertently contributes to the escalating cost of living, making it increasingly difficult for many Australians to own a home in their desired locations. Australians' desire for a spacious living and a certain lifestyle significantly exacerbates the housing affordability crisis. People don't want to change. It's the same story everywhere. I'm going to tell you about what's happening in my hometown of Frankston. Frankston is located on Melbourne's Port Phillip Bay. It's situated 41 kilometres southeast of Melbourne CBD and stands between Metro Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. The Frankston CBD is on prime real estate. In fact, from just a few levels up, you can get ocean views. Over recent years, there have been many potential development sites going through the process of getting approvals. Last year, small local activist groups with apparently a large amount of influence caused the Victorian government to put a pause on all of these projects. You've got a couple of things going on here which is representative of the whole country and the housing crisis that we face. Firstly, you've got your NIMBYs, not in my backyarders, who don't want change. And secondly, you also have this thing where governments are making it hard for the builders and developers to create additional housing that we all know is required. This is a really important factor for me. The housing crisis just reflects the fact that successive governments at both federal and state level don't care about the average voter. If they did, then the problem would never have gotten to the crisis levels of where they are now. But wait, there's more. There's probably a few different ways which I could approach the topic of immigration and how it fits in with the housing crisis. For a more detailed breakdown on immigration, you can check out my video on Big Australia I did a little while back. I want to start somewhere a bit left of field here, and that's the students. Australia has long been leaders in the global student market. You can see here from this graph that we're making up for lost time. But is that really wise? Firstly, they put more demand into an already clogged up housing market. Secondly, there's the question of, shouldn't we be bringing in immigrants to fill the job shortages rather than students that will have jobs in 4 to 6 years? We don't have the workers to be able to build all the houses we need to put roofs over people's heads. Wouldn't it make sense to bring in these skills? I don't know here, guys. Just give us a comment and let me know if I'm making sense, because to me, it's crystal clear. Our policies again fail to meet the most important needs of the people. Talking about policy failure, let's talk about tax. If you want any more proof of government setting policy for the rich, look no further than negative gearing. Rewarding investors for losing money is a bad idea. The idea of capitalism, which is the best system we've got, is that capital goes to where it's most needed in society. Now, you might say that negative gear is helping supply housing. Certainly that argument has been used over recent decades. If we're going to incentivize players in the economy for helping solve our problems, then I would argue the best people to incentivize right now are builders and developers. Giving passive investors money for bad investments via negative gearing so they can sit on their backsides and do nothing just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't help fix the supply issue. It leads to scarcity, which will push the housing crisis further. Here's an interesting little tidbit. The Victorian Homebuyer Fund has so far provided $1.1 billion in funding since its inception a couple of years ago. The Victorian Homebuyer Fund is a shared equity scheme where the Victorian government pitch in 25% towards the property purchase. The deal is you co-own a property with the Victorian government. So if you can only afford a $750,000 home, guess what? You can now afford $1 million property. These shared equity schemes are helping cushion the property market in Melbourne and Sydney. I think there's something else happening here. It's becoming clearer to me that people are holding land because they understand it's scarce. The land is an inflation hedge and smart people with relatively low debt levels are just holding. I believe this is a factor when it comes to the disastrously low availability of supply on the market, and if supply continues to dwindle, then the housing crisis has only one direction to go.
Australians are living through the worst housing crisis in decades.
At the end of the day, this thing is beyond stopping. It's a runaway machine and it's going to end with bad results for the Australian way of living. The housing crisis is just a symptom of sick governance. Unfortunately, things are going to get worse before we say goodbye to the current era of politics. My only advice is to take responsibility for your own financial outcomes. Times are getting tougher and the government isn't going to come in to save you. If you get this, please subscribe and join my online community, My Personal Economy, which is free to join, but it's all about taking responsibility for your own financial future. See you next time.